Hey guys, it's me, Keenan with the Aries Moon channel, and today got another story about the same length as yesterday. It was probably about 18 minutes. I think it might be a little shorter this time. Today it's about Texas, called the Shadows of the Lone Star, or I put it in the Lone Star Shadows, but I'm gonna give it my Texan voice, born and raised. So. Um, Gonna do a little mix of just a country accent, and it's about 10 chapters, so shouldn't be too long today. Hope y'all enjoy. Thank you. Shadows of the Lone Star. Chapter 1: The Disappearance. The sun was setting over the vast Texas plains, casting a golden hue across the rugged landscape. It was a typical warm evening in Collin County, where the scent of wildflowers mixed with the dust of the road. As the light began to fade, the small town of McKinney was aglow with soft orange light of street lamps. Families were gathering for dinner, and children were playing in the yards, and life unfolded as it had for generations. But beneath the veneer of this idyllic scene lay undercurrents of fear and confusion. Jackie Little, a local high school senior, had vanished without a trace. Jackie was well loved in her community, a bright student, a star athlete on the soccer team, and a volunteer at the local animal shelter. Her parents, Tom and Linda, were well-known figures in town. Tom was a hard-working mechanic, while Linda worked as a nurse at the local hospital. They had raised Jackie to be independent and resourceful, which made her sudden disappearance all the more alarming. On the evening of April 15th, the police received a frantic call from Linda, who reported Jackie missing after she failed to return home from school. The police launched a search immediately, checking local parks, acquaintances' homes, and nearby areas. The more they searched, the more haunting question loomed. Where could she have possibly gone? Chapter 2: The Investigation Begins. The following day, Texas Ranger Jake McGraw was called in to assist with the case. Known for his sharp instincts and relentless pursuit of justice, he had the reputation for solving even the most perplexing cases. Jake arrived early in the morning, his broad-shouldered frame silhouetted against a vibrant Texas sky. Wearing a well-used cowboy hat and denim jeans, he epitomized the rugged spirit of Texas Rangers. McGraw met with Sheriff Bill Collins, who filled him in on the details. "We searched everywhere, Jake. Friends, parties, the park. Jackie was active in the community, and it's like she just vanished," Collins said, running his hand through his thinning hair. Jake nodded, his mind racing. "We need to talk to her friends, see if there's anything unusual in her behavior or anyone she might have been worried about." They began with Jackie's closest friends, Megan and Brian. The two teenagers were visibly shaken, their eyes red from crying. "She was excited about the prom," Megan said, her voice trembling. "She couldn't stop talking about her dress and wanted us to help her pick out shoes. She even mentioned anything about leaving or being unhappy." Brian added, "The last time I saw her, she was at soccer practice on Thursday. Everything seemed normal." Jake noticed the tension between the two friends. "Everything okay between you?" Megan shot Brian a glance, then exhaled. I heard her arguing with her dad a few nights ago. It was pretty loud." "About what?" Jake asked, intrigued. "She wanted to go to a concert in Dallas, but they wouldn't let her," she replied, biting her lip. It wasn't much to go on, but Jake made a note. Over the next few days, he delved deeper into Jackie's life, speaking with other classmates, teachers, and even the coaches from her soccer team. Most stories aligned. She was a bright beacon of enthusiasm in a world that had often felt mundane. But the underlying tension in her relationship with her parents became a recurrent thing among her peers. Chapter 3. The Search Expands. Days turned into a week, and despite the continued efforts of law enforcement, there were no leads. The community rallied together for searches, but they mostly scoured open fields and nearby woods, the very same places where they had once played as children. Frustration began to creep in among the search parties. Meanwhile, Jake decided to investigate the argument between Jackie and her father. He arranged a meeting with Tom, who was a mountain of emotion. He described Jackie as a headstrong and independent, often clashing with him over curfews and rules. She wanted to live with her life. She wanted to live her life, but I was just trying to protect her, he said, tears welling in his eyes. Have you thought this could be connected to any threats she may have received? Jack asked carefully. No, she was just a normal girl. She'd either be with her friends or at home. I never thought. His voice trailed off, fading into despair. Jake decided to visit some of Jackie's classmates again, and during a conversation with a girl named Laura, she mentioned a troubling incident from a month prior. There was this guy named Danny. He kept trying to talk to her. He didn't take the hint, and Jackie told him to back off, but he was relentless. Did he ever make threats? Jake pressed, feeling a knot from his stomach. Laura looked down. I don't know. She just said he was creepy. She might have told him to leave her alone, but Danny has a temper. And that night, Jake ran a background check on Danny. He was a troubled young man with multiple arrests for petty crimes and a history of violent confrontation. Jake's instincts told him they might just have a lead. Chapter 4. The Alarming Discovery. Jake and Sheriff Collins discovered that Danny lived on the outskirts of town, in a rundown trailer with the family members who had little interest in discipline. They approached the trailer, a sense of foreboding hanging in the air as they knocked on the peeling door. A grizzled man in his late 30s opened it up. Skepticism etched across his face. What do you want? He growled. Is Danny here? Jake asked firmly. The man rolled his eyes, but stepped aside. A few moments later, Danny appeared, a smirk quickly fading upon seeing law enforcement presence. Listen, we're looking for Jackie Little, Jake stated. People say you were bothering her. I didn't bother her. She's the one who kept rejecting me, Danny shot back, his voice rising defensively. Where were you the night she went missing? Jake asked, scrutinizing the young man's face. Danny fidgeted. Out with friends. We were hanging out by the creek. Can anyone vouch for you? Collins pressed. No, it was just a fun night, Danny stammered. Jake wasn't convinced. We'll be in touch. He snatched up Danny's driving records as they departed. He had a history of fights and restraining order filed against him just months earlier. They both sensed they were getting closer, but it wasn't enough to charge him. Chapter 5. Cracks in the Case. Days passed, and the tension in McKinney was palpable. Local newspapers filled with stories about Jackie's disappearance, pleading for information. But as the articles piled up from time drifted by, each one fueled the community's fears rather than appeased them. Jake learned of another individual who had been seen near Jackie's school. It was Debbie, a reclusive woman known for her odd behaviors and fascination with local legends. And over the years, she had become something of an urban legend herself, with tales of her roaming the woods at night believed to be associated with the supernatural. Jake and Sheriff Collins decided to pay Debbie a visit in her dilapidated home. The door creaked open, revealing a scatter of various religious symbols and drawings, an unsettling collection of newspaper clippings about missing persons. What do you want? Debbie asked, her voice shaky but cold. We're looking for Jackie Little. We understand you might know something, Collins said, keeping his distance. Debbie chuckled ominously. They don't listen, do they? The spirits always know what is lost. Sometimes they don't want to be found. What do you mean? Jackie demanded, taking a step closer. Jackie had a light about her that drew some attention. The ones in the shadows don't like that much, she warned cryptically, her eyes widening in intensity. Before they could probe further, she slipped aside, slamming the door right behind her. Disconcerted, Jake exchanged glances with Collins. Chapter 6, A Breakthrough. Jackie. Chapter 6, A Breakthrough. The case continued to stall until Jake received a call from a local gas station employee who had developed a routine of keeping track of regular customers. Ranger McGraw, you might want to take a look at this surveillance footage from last week, the employee said, sounding breathless. The grainy video revealed something shocking. Jackie getting into a pickup truck that belonged to a known associate of Danny's. Her demeanor appeared calm, but the circumstances were dubious. What do you want to do? Collins asked, sensing the urgency in Jake's voice. Jake considered their options. Let's track down this pickup and find out who was driving it. The vehicle led them to a rundown house on the outskirts of town, where they knocked on the door, adrenaline coursing through their veins. A man in his late 20s opened it, clad in a stained t-shirt and looking around nervously. Yeah, what do you want? He eyed them warily. We're looking for Jackie Little, Jake stated flatly. You'd better start talking. The man stammered, sweat trickling down his forehead. I don't know where she is. I told Danny I saw her, but Danny didn't do anything. Danny? The guy with the temper? Jake remarked, narrowing his eyes. He could feel the pieces aligning but hesitated, knowing they had to tread carefully. They pressed him for more information, and in a moment of weakness the man divulged that Danny had brought Jackie to a remote cabin a few days earlier after she had gotten into the truck willingly. Chapter 7, The Cabin in the Woods. With this new lead, Jake made a quick decision. They drove over to the cabin, a secluded rundown building surrounded by dense woods. Jake's heart raced as they approached the entrance. Weapons drawn, the door creaked ominously upon opening, revealing only shadows and silence. Check the perimeter, Jake said, signaling to Collins. Inside it was eerily quiet. They moved cautiously, glancing at items scattered around, empty beer cans, a broken chair, and what looked like an overturned backpack. This was not an accidental campsite. Something felt wrong. Jake, get in here, Collins called from the back of the cabin. Jake rushed in and found Collins crouched near the ground. There, half hidden under the debris, was Jackie's jacket, unmistakable with her school emblem stitched onto the front. Go get a forensic team out here now, Jake ordered, tension tightening in his stomach. As they scoured the cabin for more clues, a noise from upstairs interrupted them. Both men instinctively turned, hearts pounding. Ranger McGraw, open up, a voice shouted. Danny was suddenly there, wild-eyed and panicked. What have you done? Danny's eyes darted wildly as he shoved past them. She was just supposed to stay. I wasn't going to hurt her, I swear. Jake's heart sank as he realized the truth. There was something darker at play here. Where is Jackie? Jake demanded, stepping closer. Talk, now. I didn't do it. I just wanted her to listen. I never meant to hurt her, Danny shouted, a broken edge creeping into his voice. Get him in cuffs, Collins barked, quickly stepping in. The weight of their discovery hung heavy between them. But when they rushed back upstairs, Jackie was nowhere to be found. Chapter 8: The Final Push. With Danny apprehended, their investigation took a turn. Under the pressure, he started to crack, telling stories filled with paranoia, fear, delusions, and protecting Jackie from what he called bad men. As interrogations dug deeper, the truth began to unfurl. It became increasingly evident that he had become entwined in a disturbing obsession, convinced that he was acting in Jackie's best interest. With less than 48 hours until the traditional media blitz, Jake devised a plan. They collaborated with the sheriff's office to arrange a publicly televised plea for both Danny and the authorities, urging anyone who might have information to step forward. But as the broadcast aired, Jake felt a gnawing sense of urgency. Have they pushed too far? Would Danny react dangerously? The heated tension was palpable as the community remained on edge, straining for closure. But when Jake felt his frustration peak, a tip struck like lightning. A local hiker had seen a girl matching Jackie's description deep in the woods, a few miles from the cabin. Racing to the location, Jake used every skill in his arsenal, a knowledge of the landscape and an unyielding will to find Jackie. As they trekked through the thick brush and towering pines, he spotted a flash of movement. "Over there!" he shouted, breaking into a run. Jake pushed the last branches apart, nearly crying out as his heart leaped. There, tied to a tree, was Jackie. She looked pale but alive, her eyes wide with fear. Chapter 9: Rescue and Recovery. "Jackie!" Jake shouted, rushing forward to untie her bonds. With each knot released, he felt relief wash over him. The moment her eyes met his, she broke into sobs. I thought I would die here." "It's okay, you're safe now," Jake reassured her, wrapping his arms around her, shielding her from the remnants of her traumatic ordeal. Overwhelmed, Jackie explained how Danny had grown increasingly unhinged, believing he was helping her escape from a world that would only hurt her. During one of his manic episodes, he ended up tying her up, convinced it would protect her. He had been lurking in the shadows, feeding off her fear, all while Jackie's will to survive had kept her alive. Back at the sheriff's office, Jackie fell into her mother's arms, the community rallying around the girl they had lost forever. But Jake stood on the sidelines, watching as the family reunited. As tears flowed in the aftermath of the trauma, Jake felt a renewed sense of purpose swell within him. He knew justice wouldn't restore what had been lost, but it sure would ensure no one else would go through the same thing. Chapter 10: The Aftermath. Danny was charged with multiple offenses, ultimately receiving time in a psychiatric facility. The town slowly returned to its routine, but carried with it its memory of fear and uncertainty. Jake closed the case file and leaned back in his chair, reflecting on the unfolding drama that had seemed to be a mix of fate, choices, and darkness. He took a moment to cherish the bright twinkle of the summer sun that streamed through the office window, a reassurance of resilience against the shadows. In a world filled with complexities, it's moments like these that are reminded him of the importance of vigilance, and as a Texas Ranger, every case was personal. As he watched the small town of McKinney breathe again, he allowed himself a moment of peace, knowing that in the vast Texas landscape, they had collectively protected something more precious than justice. They had protected hope.